Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
So this is not the greatest connection. You're jerking around here, but I hope you can see me okay and hear me okay. I first of all, I just wanted to congratulate and thank you all for what you've done. Thank you, students, as well as your teacher. I think it was terrific. I what I liked about the pieces where you were saying that you weren't just criticizing or demanding things, you were saying that you are actually doing things in your own lives. And I think that's what gave the real power to the message to the Prime Minister, that you're doing your part, and so now you're hoping that he'll do his part. The the reality is that the impact of climate change is going to be have very little consequence to people like me or even Mr. Harper, who's a bit younger than me. But the impact of climate change is going to reverberate throughout your entire lives. I mean, you are the ones with the biggest stake in what does or does not happen in the coming years. And you had every right to speak out and make that known. Now I know, see, the problem we face is that for the last 4 years, every politician in Ottawa has only been thinking about one thing. When is the next election? They're only concerned about getting reelected, but you don't vote. So the reality is you're not on the political agenda. That's not because politicians are evil or stupid. It's just the nature of the political game is that they're only interested in people who vote. And so I think it's really important that young people get up and start making strong statements. Look, I may not be able to vote, but what you're doing now is going to impact my life for the rest of my adult years. So I've got a right to get up and speak. And when young people ask me, well, what can I do? You guys are all doing your bit, and I'm very, very proud of you. But I think you also you can do something else. The most important people in the world are your mother and father, and you've got to tell mom and dad, look, I'm worried. And I was very struck by the number of you who said that you're farming, and you know that they're harvesting later. You can plant earlier. Like you can see because you're out on the land. You can see that the weather and climate are changing. And mom and dad should become eco warriors, I think, on your behalf. That's the big challenge that we face. The other thing we've got to tell our so-called leaders is Canada, of all of the industrialized countries, Canada is probably more vulnerable to climate change than any other country. We're a northern country. We know the warming has gone on much more in the Arctic than down where we live. And the Inuit have been telling us for 20 years they can see the changes happening. So we're going to be impacted like mad. We also have the longest marine coastline of any country in the world. And that means as the oceans warm, forget about the ice sheets falling in, just by warming, the water is going to expand and sea level rise is going to affect us more than any other country. And finally, you start thinking about parts of the economy that are affected by climate, agriculture, forestry, fisheries, tourism. These are all going to be impacted. So I think that we have a right to tell our Prime Minister, hey, we elected you to lead us into the future. And if you don't face climate change as a major issue to deal with now, you're failing as our leader. And we've got to let him know that Canada is going to be impacted tremendously by climate change, and we've got to do something now. That's my little speech to you all. I just want to thank you guys so much for everything you've done. I thought it was a terrific video. Congratulations on winning the competition, and continue doing good stuff. I don't know if your teacher wanted to have a little question and answer, or what? Do you know what's up, Panos? Or
If they, yeah, I'm not
yeah.
sure. Yeah,
If you have any questions, comments, I'd be happy to respond.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions.
Fire
I have a few
away.
questions. I hope you can. Fire away. One of you, please ask
Okay.
a question.
What do you think will happen to Saskatchewan if climate change continues the way it is?
Well, I'm not a climatologist. I only say what I read that the experts tell me. But from what I gather, there is going to be greater threat of droughts in the central part of North America. So, you know, during the 30s, states like Oklahoma were called dust bowls because farming practices had led to the exposure of topsoil that just blew away. And I think the fear is that drought is going to impact, especially when we don't get the heavy snowfall and the buildup of snow that is related to how much moisture you have in the soil in the summer. There's a great fear that drought is going to increase and be a big threat to the breadbasket of Canada. And with that increased temperature and drought, of course, there'll be many explosions of pests, both plant and animal pests, I would imagine. So we're changing the ecology of the area radically.
Do you think Canada will make any progress at the Copenhagen conference?
Well, all indications are that we are the spoiler, that Canada and Saudi Arabia are really there to try to prevent any real hard targets to be set. But I think the problem, I keep trying to figure out why is it Canada hasn't been able to do anything. And one of the arguments is, well, we're a northern country. And, because we're a northern country, it's cold, we have to use more fossil fuel. And I like to point out that Sweden is a northern country. I just spent a week in Sweden, the first week in this month. And by 2:30 in the afternoon in Stockholm, it was already dark. And the light comes up in the morning around 10 o'clock. So they're way further north than Saskatoon or Vancouver. Sweden imposed a carbon tax in the 1990s to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They are now more than 8% below 1990 levels of emissions. They're already past the Kyoto target. And during that time, their economy rose by 44%. And yet our Prime Minister says we can't afford to do anything about Kyoto because it'll destroy the economy. But Sweden is like Canada, and they've shown they can have lots of economic growth and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Maybe one more question?
Did you think a small class like us would win this?
Well, there have been individuals that have submitted their efforts. So you're up against individuals. So sure, you guys. But I think it's terrific. I think it's wonderful that you're from a farming area, because you can give us direct personal response to actually seeing climate change, and that gives what you did a tremendous amount of power. So thank you so much for coming out of the Saskatchewan and telling the rest of Canada and the world, I hope, what your concerns are. So carry on, and thank you very much for doing this.